what I've Thanks. What I've prepared this morning, not knowing everyone's experience level with longleaf, is just a really solid introduction to the longleaf system, the tree itself, and how the tree and the ecosystem are really well suited and well adapted for living in a fire-prone environment. And so that's why, since we've been talking about longleaf for decades now, we've always kind of referred to it as the pine that fire built. And I hope you'll see why by the time we get to the end of this. So longleaf, I'm sorry, I'm just getting my bearings on my screen here. Longleaf pine and the longleaf pine ecosystem, it once occupied about 90 million acres across the southeast coastal plain, and that's kind of that shaded area that you see on the map there. It wasn't always it wasn't always in a single form, so it existed in kind of these different woodland types or forest types. Everything from montane longleaf, kind of with rocky soils, down to very sparse savannas, where it's more like a grassland with trees. So you can see we're stretching all the way from Virginia and some believe parts of coastal Maryland, all the way through the entire Florida Peninsula and into the eastern parts of Texas. Um, at its historical low, it's estimated there was only 3 million of those 90 million acres remaining. And so in the early 1990s, kind of reached a pivotal point where several people, including the founders of our organization, recognized that if something wasn't done, this entire tree and more importantly, the ecosystem could just fall off the face of the earth. And so the mid 90s is really when there was a concerted effort to better study longleaf, really get some involvement in restoring it and managing it and expanding its acreage. So today we are comfortable calling the acreage based on a lot of data and a lot of input from partners. We are crediting longleaf with being on 5.2 million acres. And that's thanks to just tons of wide range restoration efforts, partnerships, a lot of federal support for that too on public and private lands primarily. And just a lot of good science and research promoting good management practices. So why is longleaf special? Why is it worth restoring and improving? Well, it provides a wide range of habitat diversities. So yes, it all has longleaf in common, but what's more important is what's on the ground. That's where the biodiversity exists. That's where that ecological function takes place. And so it can look at a lot of different ways, from pitcher plant bogs, sand hills, rolling hills, mountainous terrains as well. And that's all important because it supports a large variety and diversity of wildlife species. So this is just a handful of species that some of which are strict to longleaf. They only exist in longleaf systems. So if you're thinking of the red-cockaded woodpecker or gopher tortoise or indigo snake, those are only going to be found in fire-maintained longleaf systems, and they just have very particular habitat requirements that longleaf can provide. Longleaf can also provide habitat for more of your general species, like possums and turkey and deer, and then some that are kind of somewhere in the middle, like bobwhite quail, which is a favorite species of so many people. They're not exclusive to longleaf, but they definitely find a good home in longleaf if the right pieces are in place. Fox squirrels are always great to see, and then a really wide variety of songbirds and migratory birds and amphibian species. So there is a ton of longleaf that call longleaf, a ton of wildlife that call longleaf home, and that people enjoy recreating with as well. So what is longleaf pine? I'll kind of stay on this for the next several slides just to give a good identification of it. Talked about the ecosystem. It's one of the most diverse on Earth, and certainly one of the most diverse in North America. And for many of us, it's right here in our backyard. So that's something special. Um, the tree itself, it's well regarded as being very wind strong, rather pest resistant, though not 100%. Nothing can really be pest proof, but it tends to do better than other southern pines. Very resilient to fire. Uh, it's treasured for its strong wood in the market, and it can be very long lived. All of that is true because it exhibits a unique life cycle that's very adapted to this southeastern environment and climate. And you see that adaptation kind of manifested in every part of the tree. For one, the needles, as the name implies, long leaf, are very long. It's among the longest of the southern pines. Typically, 8 to 12 inches, but they can produce needles that are quite long. The needles themselves too promote fire. They have a lot of resin in them. So in addition to their length and being able to kind of be that long fuse almost for fire to transmit on the forest floor, they also have those chemicals that help sustain fire better than other conifer needles. Um, the cones are also very large. That's a good way to tell the difference between the different pine trees you might see. They are sporadic seed producers, so that's a consideration for management. They're not annual producers or even producing a lot of seed to regenerate each year. Instead, they rely on being long-lived species. The bark is a really beautiful reddish tone, reddish brown, large blocky plates, kind of scaly, like paper-like edges. Um, this is an adaptation to protect against the heat of fire as that tree matures, providing an insulative effect. It can also provide habitat for things like insects and grubs that are important for some of those other species from the slide before. And finally, the root system is also adapted to live in a world with fire. Longleaf exhibits a unique way of developing a lot of root structure in those early years, really investing in that underground reserve before putting above ground growth on. So we'll start here with the seedling stage and kind of go around the life cycle and just touch on some of those factors. Don't really Well, I say we don't really do a lot of management around the seedling stage. Most longleaf these days is planted from nursery stock, so it's already been head started in nurseries. But many naturally managed stands do rely on natural regeneration, the seed that falls from the existing parent trees. Um, the seed is very heavy, so it only falls a short distance from that parent tree. It also makes those seeds a prime target as a food source for birds and small mammals, and even feral hogs can be quite destructive during this first year in the ground. So that's just something as managers that folks keep in mind. The grass stage is one of the most characteristically longleaf kind of phenomenons that it has. Um, so as I mentioned, it puts a lot of reserve in developing a root system. So above ground, it looks like this, sort of like a big tuft of grass for several years. Um, it's doing most of its underground development, being able to secure water and nutrients from an extensive root system. Um, but believe it or not, this is actually one of longleaf's most fire resistant stages. That big flush of needles surrounds that center bud. So a passing fire, a low intensity fire that just passes across the ground. Um, the needles do their job of deflecting heat, kind of absorbing it, letting off steam as they burn, and keeping that center bud considerably cooler than the air around it, and preserving the longleaf's ability to regrow needles and grow the following year. So burning in the grass stage is highly recommended, and it's remarkable to see those things respond after they've been burned through. So yeah, they can be burned quite soon, especially if we're talking about nursery planted longleaf. You could begin to burn or consider burning the following year after planting. We just want to make sure that the trees haven't had any other stressors that are reducing their vigor. We want to see more of like that full pom-pom look, and not having trees that are kind of barely hanging on. We want them to be able to recover from a fire. It is a natural occurrence and it's something they're adapted to, but it still is a stressor. And so, as managers, we want to make sure we're burning when they're able to adapt. Most of the trees planted out of the nursery are already meeting that last point, which is root collar diameter. I apologize for the acronym. So it's more about the vigorous growing stage and about having adequate time in the ground prior to burning. They're very resilient, even if they are damaged, even if they've lost all their needles. You'll typically see this just a few days or weeks following a burn. Those orange kind of singed needles are what was there prior to the burn. They did their job. And those green ones in the center around that center bud are the new growth. And so that's exactly what you want to see following a prescribed burn. I always like to caveat that with saying that they're not fireproof. You can absolutely do some damage to longleaf under less than ideal conditions. Um, but patience is key to see how they respond. Patience is also key if it's just not the right burn day, to wait for one that will give you those favorable conditions. And so speaking of that, I just wanted to show kind of one example of a really ideal condition to burn longleaf. Young longleaf is usually burned in the winter. When it's not actively growing, it's just better able to respond if it's not currently growing. And so you can see this fire just moves right across those young longleaf and leaves them nice and green in the black. Really picture perfect, which is what you want. So after the longleaf has been in the grass stage for a couple of years, and that's very variable depending on the conditions around it, depending on its competition and its ability to grow. You'll begin to see height initiation, or sometimes called the rocket stage or the bolting stage. And that's when that tree has reserved all of those resources for a couple of years in the ground, kept itself very low growing to the ground in order to bolt up in a single growing season. So it may grow, 5 or 6 feet over the course of a spring and summer in several different flushes. And hey, there's Ryan. Got a preview in here. So this is showing a couple of different examples from different areas, different properties of that height growth. Some can be, quite explosive, but once they start to put on height, the tree is adapted to do that rapidly so that it can get above the height of the next fire before that would typically take place, naturally. So it is really a true fire adaptation in the way that the tree grows and conserves its resources. So this shows another example of trees that are in the middle of that rocket stage. A little bit trickier to burn just because those terminal buds are kind of sticking up in the air, not quite as protected as the grass stage. But this is where planning and experience comes into play. It can still be a really, really successful burn, as you can see. just another example in that stage in a natural stand. So just like kind of a pocket of longleaf. So next, the sapling stage really encompasses the majority of the tree's life. Um, that includes everything up to what we call mature or old age, old growth. I'm sorry. Um, so the management here would be to continue a frequent burn program. We'd like to see longleaf burned um, for the most part every 2 to 3 years. In some habitat types, that can stretch into a fourth year, but in general, we're kind of liking to see it on a more frequent basis, um, just to keep that ecosystem fully functioning and healthy, and avoid problems uh, of missing a burn window or a burn a year to burn. So a lot of management can take place here too, depending on the landowner's objectives. If there are income objectives, this could be a time to be seeing pine straw come off as an income stream, um, thinnings or their timber sales. Again, this is a rather long chunk of time for the tree, so a lot of management might be happening. But one of those things ought to always include prescribed burning. And so this is one example of how that might look. It could be a little bit more intense fire behavior. Again, that just depends on the day, depends on the fuel conditions underneath it, and depends on that day's weather. So this is a look kind of right in the heat of the burn. Um, and as long as we're not getting that fire up into the very tops, it can actually do some good in thermally pruning some of those lower branches so that you have a nice tree form as that tree matures, dropping those lower branches and having a nice straight form. So you can see after it's cleared through, everything looks very cool, still have green needles. They may brown as a delayed effect, but again, as long as those tops have remained green, your tree, by all accounts, will survive. And so sometimes it doesn't look quite as clear cut immediately following a burn. Um, Something that looks like this, could occur where fire went through a little bit higher than you would have liked, higher into the tree, a little bit more intense. Longleaf does have an amazing ability to recover from this, and it really depends on the time of year that you're doing it. This one was done just prior to the spring green up, so the landowner had about a month and a half to wait and see. But that picture on the right is the same stand. You can see the green grass growing on the ground, and you can see that white kind of candle-like bud and new green needles pushing their way through behind the singed ones. Not ideal. You want it to look more like that previous photo immediately post-burn, but it just is a testament to longleaf's ability to recover. Um, that can also work for you if you have a fire maintained longleaf stand and wildfire passes through. So this is an example of a kind of a sapling age stand that had previously been managed with fire, so fuel loads were very low, and this it was run over by a wildfire from an adjacent property, and then you can see that picture on the right. Uh, 2 years later, recovering beautifully. So it's a good kind of risk management tool as well, um, since we can't really control what's going on our neighbor's property either. Um, sapling stage longleaf can be burned under a variety of conditions. So this is just an example of a very low intensity, high humidity burn to achieve more of a plantation, timber management objective where the landowner is very particular about scorch height and all that. So, and finally, the mature stage. So this is man, if you're lucky enough to have a stand like this, in life, you're lucky enough. So this stage is marked by sustained growth, just putting on mass, putting on density. Usually the tree has grown as high as it will. And so it will take on characteristics of elongating its branches, giving it more of a flat top, a very unique kind of silhouette. And the lower limbs might begin to drop off, but the trunk will remain straight, and its branches continuing to grow out rather than up. So how high can a longleaf grow? It can grow, upwards of 110 feet or higher in very rich soils. On poorer soils, the size and the age are not always correlated. They can grow, just top out at 60 feet and just be very very small diameters. But if you were to core into them, you could see that they could be, 100 or 200 years old, but only be 8 inches diameter. So it can be a little deceptive. So the benefits that come from a mature stand are just phenomenal for wildlife. A lot of those specialist species prefer mature stands or a mixed age stand that contains mature trees, just for different nesting preferences and other habitat needs. Of course, if you are managing a property for income, you can start to see, higher value timber markets start to open up, pole markets as well, depending on your area. And there may even be markets in your area for things like ecosystem services or carbon storage, that a long-lived tree like longleaf would really fit well into those types of profiles. So all throughout its life, longleaf really exemplifies the idea of a fire adapted tree. It's not only adapting that in all of its life stages, but it's promoting fire with the material of its pine needles. And and so fire is that common denominator. It grew up, it evolved and it grew around fire and vice versa. And one of those reasons is that the Southeast and the range of longleaf receives a really high frequency of lightning strikes per year. And so this map kind of shows, the more orange or red the zone, the more frequent of ground strikes from lightning. Typically before pre-settlement, those fires would spread on their own until they ran into a natural boundary or barrier. I'm sorry. So prior to settlement, that would be the main driver of shaping the ecosystem around us. Now that we have a lot of infrastructure in the way, land managers have to make sure we put that natural process back. So we do that for a couple of reasons, and I know I'm running up on my time, so I'll just kind of leave those reasons up here on the screen rather than go through them. But these are probably common to any of you that are landowners or land managers. Fire can really meet those objectives for your land, whether it's controlling unwanted things or promoting the things that you do want to see more of on your property, managing that risk reduction, encouraging regeneration of flowering species or good wildlife species, and really just the aesthetics of a fire maintained longleaf pine stand. So I think I'm gonna leave it there and let Ryan pick up with more fire talk. And if we have time for questions, I'm happy to take some now while Ryan's getting set, or we can hold those to the end. Happy to do that.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but if you do have something, please go ahead and send it there. And I think for the sake of time, let's just hold questions to the end. So Ryan, you go on ahead.
Thank you. All right, let me share this screen. There we go. All right, guys, thank you so much for inviting me to present for this webinar. It's good to see some friends and colleagues in the participant list. I'm glad to see everybody. And so I'm Ryan Mitchell. I'm a Prescribed Fire Outreach Coordinator with Tall Timbers. Tall Timbers, just a quick and dirty of it. Tall Timbers is considered the birthplace of fire ecology. Has been doing fire research for a long time, as well as game bird, specifically quail research. We're the new kids on the block at Tall Timbers with a private lands prescribed fire initiative. Our goal is basically to get more fire on the ground through training, utilizing novel ways of getting landowners to conduct prescribed dangerous. There's no and, if, or buts about it. It's a phenomenal management tool that can't be replicated through any other treatments. And we use it oftentimes to simplify it for fuel reduction or system restoration or pest reduction. And Karen put that huge list of different benefits of prescribed fire up there. But looking at it, fires can escape containment. If you do enough prescribed fire, you're going to have a fire get out at some time. It's just the way it goes. People can get hurt on the fire. They can get hurt coming or going from the fire. And smoke can impact roadways, cause health issues, can do many things. And we're starting to see more focus be turned towards the smoke of prescribed fires with the EPA's PM 2.5 decision that came down this past February. But all that comes into play when we're doing prescribed burns. But on the other side of it, and this is a phenomenal statistic from Florida, and forgive me for that it's from 2019, but it just really drives home the point that in 2019, the state of Florida issued almost 88,000 burn permits. The treated acres, 2.43 million acres treated with prescribed fire in Florida. And a chunk of that is with sugarcane down south, but there's still well over a million, almost 1.5 million acres of prescribed fire on natural lands in Florida. But if you look at the bottom, they had escapes on less than 1% of burns were escapes, only totaling 1,677 acres. So when you do the math on that, it's a really good, safe track record with prescribed fire. So when we're looking at what gives protection to burners, what's their quote unquote insurance? And many states have different liability laws. Some might be simple negligence, some might be gross negligence, but those offer protection to the burners. We have an increasing standard of training, and you start looking at different states and their certified prescribed burn manager programs and the training required. There's a lot of overlap in there, and it's all being elevated. Nobody's taking away training or reducing the need for it. We have more continuing education outreach resources than we've ever had before. We have more people that can help share the knowledge and safety of prescribed fire. We have technology, what we're doing today. This wasn't possible 15, 20 years ago, but we're able to get on wherever we are at our house or at our office and learn more. And then third-party insurance companies, and I'll touch on this very briefly at the end because that's a talk in itself. But when we're working with private landowners, you ask them why, what is keeping you from conducting prescribed fire? And many surveys have been done on this, and I think there are 7 or 8 of them in publication now. Here's a summary of 5 of them. And when you look through all of them, be it in the Southeast, nationwide, out in Texas, the common barriers are liability, the fear of liability, what's going to happen if I have a problem, lack of burn days, or the weather. That's especially out west. That's a big issue. I don't have the capacity or manpower to do the burning myself. I need help. I'm only one person. And just because you're certified, just because you go through all the education, you still need hands-on training. And that's highlighted when I talk to landowners all the time. It's, okay, I have my certification card, now what? And so how can we address these barriers? And there's multiple ways to address them, and prescribed burn associations is one of them. And so let's go through the liability. For instance, down in the deep south, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina have all stepped up to gross negligence. And this gives added protection for the burn managers conducting the burns. We're hoping some of our other southern states step up and move to gross negligence. Certified burn manager training, prescribed burn manager training or certification. Most of our southern states have that. It's very important because it sets a baseline at minimal training or minimum training knowledge before you go conduct prescribed fire. Now, are you ready to go burn as soon as you get certified? Oftentimes not. You still need to fill in that knowledge gap or that applied fire gap, and that can be helped through prescribed burn associations. And one of the other benefits of PBAs is you have other certified burn managers or other experienced burn managers out there. So many eyes really add to that protection. So when we're looking at lack of burn days, trying to address that barrier, when you have a prescribed burn association, you can help by planning in advance. You have somebody there that's helping the planning, helping landowners plan along throughout the summer and the non-burn season for some people, rainy days. You can get your plans done ahead of time, and you can take advantage of what you have. Granted, some days are marginal, but Karen showed that picture of sapling longleaf, or that teenage longleaf being burned under high humidity conditions to keep the flame lengths and keep the intensity down. Well, that's important. We can't look at necessarily perfect weather to burn on all the time. Sometimes we can work in the middle and still achieve our desired results. Burn associations also help address the capacity or the manpower. It's a neighbor helping neighbor mentality or model. It allows landowners to get together, to work together, to help out on each other's properties. And also, prescribed burn equipment, oftentimes we utilize specialized equipment. And so by having burn trailers or equipment caches, we're able to have that stuff available for everybody to use. And you don't have to go out of pocket for it. And then providing hands-on training. This can be done through workshops called Learn to Burns, where you get out there, work with experienced professionals, kind of in a mentor-mentee relationship, talk to them throughout the day, see how they do it, ask questions. In a lot of our PBA coordinators, you ask them and they say, well, every prescribed burn is a learn to burn, or it's a learning opportunity. And that's true. I don't conduct a burn still now where I don't learn something on it. And it gives people the chance to see fire on the ground, work with other people, and gain experience. And then PBAs offer continuing education workshops throughout the year as well. And so these burn associations, well, all right, there's one of our goals is private lands fire. It's utilize novel ways to increase prescribed fire on private lands. But what we found with this is these burn associations really thrive in place-based fire outreach and training. It's not a one-size-fits-all. The training is designed around what that community or what that region is needing or asking for. Burn associations offer checks and balances. When you have multiple experienced people working together, and even people that don't have as much experience asking questions, it provides a new look at things. And so somebody that might have been burning for a long time, well, why do you do it that way? It's because the way I've always done it. Has anybody heard that before? And by the questions being asked, you might be able to start thinking about it a different way. And so that's another way of adding that checks and balances in there. Some of our prescribed burn associations have insurance risk pools, third-party insurance policies, and we'll touch on that towards the end. But all PBAs are able to share the capacity and the resources. It's many hands make light work, and that is a very good tool that they offer. And one of the neat things is provided economies of scale. So when you start talking to if you're a landowner with 15, 20 acres or 5 acres, and you start trying to get an agency or a consultant out there to do the burning, it's going to be hard to do it. It's usually cost prohibitive. But if you start working with your neighbors and are able to parcel properties together, it makes it much easier to do. And so this is just an example in Central Alabama. First landowner we talked to is that orange color up at the very top. And he was wanting to burn. And then he started talking to his neighbors. And all his neighbors wanted to burn. They just didn't know where to start. And so they were able to cobble this all together. And fire lines were still in place, but they were able to conduct multiple burns over property lines at one time, and that allowed them to take advantage of that burn day, take advantage of the weather window, but also manage on a larger scale. And so that's where the economies of scale come into play. So currently, I'm going to touch on tall timber supported prescribed burn associations and landowner cooperatives. And then at the end, I'll throw a link up for prescribed burn association, a national map. But currently right now, or that's both, right now, Tall Timbers is supporting PBAs or coordinators from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, where I'm sitting right now up on the top right of that picture, all the way to East Texas. And we have also on there is West Central Georgia Landowners Association and Aiken Prescribed Fire Co-op. And we have people working with both of those or providing a part-time coordinator with the other. But we're pretty entrenched down here in the Deep South, but we kind of mimic where our personnel is with working on quail up here in the Eastern Shore of Maryland over in East Texas, and also providing prescribed fire resources over there. So what do we see with our experience, Tall Timbers experience in prescribed burn associations? The keys to success, you must have dedicated coordination. And this can be a full-time person or a part-time person, but it needs to be dedicated coordination. It takes a long time to get that spark going and get the landowners together and working together. You must have year-round activity, and this is showing that value of the association. That year-round activity might be burning. We burn almost year-round, weather dependent, but it's also providing training and other workshops or prescribed burn assessments and getting people together and teaching. And so that's one of the benefits of the doldrums of the summer when it's too hot to be outside and nobody really wants to burn. We might have only 1 or 2 burns during the season, but we still have training going on. Prescribed burn associations are landowner associations. They must have landowner participation, active participation. One of the benefits of these associations, when you have a good, strong landowner group, is that they're able to run it and drive it and steer it on the direction that it needs to go to best meet the local landowners and not necessarily the objectives of agency or resource personnel. PBAs must have some redundancy and oversight from parties. It's one of those that when you're able to work with partners, you can have backstops and able to contingency plan a little better and help steer the ship. And what we've seen and the way we operate are we set the prescribed burn associations up as 501c3s, nonprofits, so they can start going after other donations and funding sources. Are all of them set up this way? No, they're not. And some very successful ones are not set up this way. But this is just the way that we do it. And at the end of the day, the goal is to build self-sufficiency in the PBA. We want the PBAs to be able to run themselves, to be a strong, thriving, growing network. And that's done with that strong board and strong landowner participation. So what do we look for in the coordinator? How does that coordinator role work? Really acts as the spark plug in the system. He or she help grow the demand. They help facilitate training. Are they conducting all the training? No, they just help bring the right people to the right place, covering topics that the landowners need. They provide mentorship, help with planning. This is a big one. Watches the weather and prioritizes burns. When you get in the mindset of planning ahead of time, having burn plans written ahead of time, having properties ready to go, the only thing we wait on then is watching the weather and having this coordinator be able to help direct people to different units or different properties to do the burn on the day that it's needed, not just when it's convenient, is really offers success. Ensures burn goals are met. And this is not necessarily acres. We don't have acreage goals on most of our prescribed burn associations. It's really just getting out there, having safe and successful prescribed burns, and instilling that culture of burning. And working on the agency side, working with federal partners, we've got to wear Nomex. And Nomex is safe and it's good. It's the top standard. But for private landowners, that's often seen as a barrier. It's like, well, I can't go out and afford to buy $300 pants and $200 shirt. And so it's really helping them learn what they can wear safe, 100% cotton shirts, blue jeans work. And we've called it blue jean burning, and it's been done for a long time, and it can be done safely. And so it's kind of instilling that culture of prescribed burning with landowners. And so one of the things that, as we start looking at the hands-on training, workshops, certification courses, we just held one the last 2 days in Georgia, Learn to Burn's hands-on prescribed fire training. People are able to get more experience. Prescribed fire education and hands-on training. Consultants got concerned that, hey, you're going to start taking business away from us. And we were able to go through and survey the landowners and talk to them and say, all right, before you burn, after you burn, how's this going to change? And if you see that at the top, I'll manage a burn on my own land. Before's the gray, after's the blue. That almost doubled. It went up significantly. People are saying, okay, now that I have seen it on the ground, I think I can manage this, maybe with a little more training, but we'll be able to get it done. Use friends and neighbors went up a little bit. Look at the private contractor or consultant to manage my burn. That went from before to after. It went down one notch, just a tiny bit. And so at the end of the day, that's really not changing. And so if you're going to use a consultant or a contractor to do your burning beforehand, you're probably going to do it afterwards. But you look at the bottom one, still not conduct a prescribed burn on my land. That went from a pretty big number down to, or what, 38% of attendees down to 5% or so. So that's where that big jump was. People saying, okay, fire's good, fire's safe, let's go ahead and do it. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So another thing, some of the prescribed burn associations are offering are third-party insurance policies. Sometimes landowners can get these. There's 1 or 2 companies still offering them on a per burn basis. But what if you're doing multiple burns? It's one of those things that gets very expensive. Depending on where you are, you might be able to get a farm and ranch policy that offers prescribed fire protection or protection for prescribed fires that get out or whatnot. Texas still has this. We don't know how long it's going to hold on. And so you start looking at all this. How, if liability is a big concern, you have state protection, gross negligence in some states. What do you do to add that? What do you do to get added protection? And it's a third-party policy. And so last year, 2023 into 4, we did a policy in Central Alabama where all official PBA burns were covered under that policy. Very expensive, but it worked, no issues. We rolled it out to Georgia this current year, and it's Southwest Georgia, Savannah River Prescribed Burn Association, West Central Georgia, Florida, West Central Georgia Landowners Fire Cooperative. So those 3 groups, if there's an official burn done under those prescribed burn associations, it's covered under that policy. Very expensive, but when it's spread among many members, the cost comes way down. So that is a possibility. If you're interested in it, get in touch with me afterwards and we could talk about it. So just touching on one of the PBAs, remember everyone's different. Each of ours that Tall Timbers helps support are different. They operate differently. So Southwest Georgia, the cost structure, basically every acre, every PBA burn is at $5 an acre for 40 acres or less, or 40 acres or more. $10 an acre for 20 acres, and it works down from there. Typically, Southwest Georgia, 5 to 50 acres. Sometimes they go above that. It just all depends on what it is. But with prescribed burn associations, once you get up above a certain acreage, it becomes something that's easier for a contractor to handle, or it might just get too big or too complex for a burn association. And so we've pushed those to contractors. Wrapping up here. So Southwest Georgia PBA, this is last year, and this is where I want to drive home the point. I mean, 61 burns, 34 unique properties, 3,400 acres treated, average burn size 34 acres. And so you start looking at that 34 acres, and this is one of those that these typically are not the ones contractors are going to want to go after, because for a contractor, when you get paid by the acre, it takes the same amount of time to burn 10 acres, to prep and burn 10 acres as it does to burn 100 or 200 acres. But typically on those smaller tracts, you possibly have adjacent landowners or adjacent homeowners right around it. Your fire breaks are probably not going to be straight. There's going to be added complexity even into those small burns. And so that becomes a problem. And then the training and outreach, 10 workshops, 284 attendees, 19 meetings, 1,700 attendees. So PBAs are social. It's a neighbor helping neighbor model. People enjoy getting out, learning about fire, fellowshipping together. It's just a great time. And so through the application of prescribed fire on private properties, neighbors who've never met each other have become friends. Families get together. It's a good time. And so looking at where PBAs are growing within tall timbers, currently we have in development, Southwest Alabama, the Eastern Shore of Maryland is working on their LLC paperwork right now. And then the mountain, an eco region, next week, the first burn for the Mountain Longleaf PBA.
Ryan, you
Yep.
blipped out for a second there. Would you mind restating those last couple seconds?
Okay, let me turn off my camera. I'm on Starlink, so I don't know if that's hurting. So we Mountain Longleaf PBA follows that Ridge and Valley eco region or ecotone in Alabama and Georgia. And since it's a very unique region and requires specific skills when burning those mountains down here, that PBA will run across state lines, and it's going to become official in June, but we'll have a first PBA burn next week for that group. And so we have growth likely in Louisiana, South Carolina, and Southeast Alabama coming up. If you want to find, oh, my screen froze. Oh, there you go. If you want to find prescribed burn associations near you, the Great Plains Fire Science Exchange has a phenomenal website that is being updated as we speak. Doesn't have all the current PBAs on there, but it's a really good snapshot of what's going on and contact information for each of them. And with that, I'm wrapped up. Does anybody have any questions?
Fantastic. Thank you. There is one question in the chat from Tom Green, who says, I'm a member of a PBA. What are some good ways to reach landowners who might be interested in burning to educate them? Also, what are good ways to educate the general public to ease concerns / fears of fire?
Oh man. So when you get into forest management, they don't tell you that it's people management and that you need a background in marketing and public affairs kind of stuff. But the best way that we've seen to reach people is neighbors telling neighbors, or being able to talk, especially with these PBAs in regions. You see the size of some of these. And Central Alabama is 25 counties, 25 large counties, because we have big ones in Alabama. And you start looking at it, and it's like neighbors are not going to know folks or the east or the west, but we see organic little pockets building within each of those prescribed burn associations where it might be 2 or 3 neighbors that have known each other, join the PBA, start burning together, and start pulling their contacts in as well. So word of mouth is great. And the social media stuff, being able to put stuff out there, and then having general workshops or general outreach events, going to kind of pounding the pavement at different fairs and areas where people show up to. That's what most of them are doing. And then educating the general public, work with your state agency. That's one that's been huge, having a prescribed fire awareness month and getting the buy-in from other professionals and partners to where they share the news of good fire, but then also just share it with their contacts.
Great, thank you. Karen, did you have any other input on that in general?
No, well, I guess just one thing, you know, if Ryan put up that map, and I'm it sounds like you're going to be sharing a lot of these resources, Mackenzie, with the group. You know, reach out to other PBAs with some of those questions. How do they do recruitment? How do they reach out to the community to see, you know, what other burners are out there, kind of get them out of the woodwork, and just kind of utilize some of their tactics.
Great, thank you. All right, let's see here. Tom says thank you as well. I am going to share my screen one more quick time. Those were some great presentations. Thank you both for being here and taking your time to do that. I just wanted to do a little shameless plug real quick. We do have an upcoming webinar next Monday as well. So if you enjoyed this one, please take a time to follow that QR code, sign up for this link on tax policy for timber tax policy for Georgia. And then last but not least, I wanted to send one big thank you out again to Karen and Ryan for presenting today, as well as for all of our attendees that showed up and attended and listened to these great presentations, as well as our sponsor one more time, Smurfette West Rock through the Forest Stewardship Council. If you have any other questions, comments, ideas, just want to chat about these topics, these are their contact information as well as mine's there as well. If you'd like to set up a webinar or have questions about what the Guild does and how you can get more involved, maybe become a member, happy to do that. There was one question about CFE credits for non-SAF members and wanting a certification for that. If you are one of those folks who are in need of that, seeing how you may be not recognized by, or you're not part of the SAF member, but want to get that CFE credit for your forester's registration, just shoot me a direct email and we can coordinate and figure out how to get you that certificate properly. Other than that, I think we are up to time, and you all have a great rest of your week, and we're really close, just around the corner to a beautiful weekend. So thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.